The Christie Sides criticism has started again. Here's some screenshots from late in the game that show Caitlin seemingly a little befuddled with her head coach. Notice Teme Fagbenle in the background there, who we will get to in just a moment. But this was at the very end of the game, obviously. And I'm not going to blame Sides for that play because Sides explained she had Clark as the inbounder due to the fact that she trusted her to make the pass, which makes sense. They were not in a situation where they could even get a catch and shoot opportunity off. So I'm not going to blame Christie Sides for that play call or that use of Caitlin Clark. Now, what was a bit confusing in the game is why they went away from the Clark and Aaliyah Boston pick and roll that was working so well, really working brilliantly. Because for all the comparisons of Caitlin Clark to Steph Curry, I really think her closest comp is Steve Nash. I've always said she's Curry plus Nash plus Kidd. And I say that because Curry, obviously, the deep threes. Kidd, her ability to rebound the ball, push it ahead, and get it up the floor in transition. But then Nash, after that, in her ability to find teammates, work teammates open, keep her dribble alive in the lane. And Boston has become her Amari Stoudemire in that role, and she is really playing well. Aaliyah Boston is really playing well. And Aaliyah Boston's a very smart player. Also, you see some of the passes she makes out there on the floor. In fact, Kelsey Mitchell blew a layup off an Aaliyah Boston pass in that game. So those two are very smart players. They can improvise. They can play off one another. Obviously, they're two excellent players overall. So it was a little strange that the Fever went away from that. Now, obviously, that's in part due to what the Sky were doing defensively, but it was much more touches for Mitchell and Nalissa Smith, who had a really poor game. Smith had a really poor game in that one. She got totally bodied by Angel Reese. You know, I've talked about Christy Wallace in that spot on the floor, but Nalissa Smith can't be that poor on the defensive end. Now, there was one comment from Christie Sides that I thought was kind of interesting. And here is what she said about the play where Clark passed the ball up to Wallace in transition.
Her to not be aggressive and take shots. I really thought when she went out in transition after that missed free throw, I thought she was gonna take it to the rim or pull up right there. That would have been her. That would have been a great shot for her, for our team. But I mean, we were up 15 at the end of the third quarter. We've got to do a better job of being able to finish out games, have a little bit more discipline in the fourth quarter. But like I said, give Chicago credit.
You know, I don't actually mind when Sides coaches Clark publicly. I have a problem when she throws her players under the bus or when she shared that comment Clark made about, the monster is unleashed or whatever. That seemed like it was supposed to be private. I don't like when she does that. But as far as coaching her publicly, I don't mind. And look, her saying be more aggressive, Caitlin Clark, is something I think Clark fans would actually want to hear. Now, on that play in question, Wallace could have finished it, or Wallace could have dumped it back to Boston, who was trailing on that play. Nevertheless, Caitlin's going to start, I'm sure, looking for her own shot more as the season progresses. But the thing is, every time there's a loss, you can't blame Christie Sides every time there's a loss, right? Like, just like we weren't talking about firing Sides anymore after this current winning streak. Now, you can point out things that she's done wrong. And again, going away from that pick and roll combination was a problem. And Sides does not exactly have the coaching resume to inspire confidence, which hurts her. But I can't make every single game, every single quarter, every single stretch of plays a referendum on the coach. Because nobody was calling for Christie Sides' head when the Fever were on that winning streak. They wouldn't be calling for Christie Sides' head if they had held on and won that game. I really think that the difference in that game, as much as I'm criticizing what was happening down the stretch, and if that sort of pattern continues, yeah, they're going to have to look for a new coach. If they continue to squander late game opportunities, they'll have to look for a new coach. But I want to be careful to not overreact to things as well, because it had been rolling for the Fever. And if I'm to pinpoint why they lost that game, it would be two things. One, the blown assists, which I did the other video on, and you can check the article on that below on Women's Fast Break on SI in the description below. But the other thing was the defense, not getting the stops, not getting the stops. And one thing that I think could really help the team is the return of Teme Fagbenle, because Fagbenle is the best on the team at running the floor in transition, catching the ball, and finishing. Look at this footage. She looks like she's pretty close. And I guarantee you, Teme is a sight for sore eyes for Caitlin Clark, who they just had a rapport from the beginning. In fact, Fagbenle had said that she loves playing with Caitlin Clark because Clark sees things before they happen, sees plays before they happen. And on some of these plays you see, I think particularly with Mitchell, she's not used to someone throwing her open, right? Instead, she's waiting for the pass so that she can turn and do her thing. And Mitchell overall has provided a scoring punch I think the team needs and a different look the team needs, but she's got to be a better receiver of the basketball. Plain and simple. Aaliyah Boston and Clark have gotten there. They need something from that spot on the wing, whether it's Wallace or Samuelson playing that spot, or Hull, or I know a lot of people are campaigning for Celeste Taylor to get a look there. When I talk about defense, she was a defensive player of the year candidate in college. So maybe she is the kind of player who could play the defense and also run the floor. But we already have seen what Fagbenle and Clark can do together. So I think that return, because Fagbenle, before Aaliyah Boston got going, was the second best player on the team. And I think that's going to be a big boost for the squad. Now, they got a rough stretch of games coming up. So when we're discussing Christie Sides and her job status and everything like that, maybe we'll revisit it after this upcoming stretch of games, because this stretch of games will tell us how much better the Fever are now than they were at the beginning of the year. How much better they are now than they were at the beginning of the year. Because if you look at what they got coming up, all of a sudden, they started to play the easier teams, and they really blew that one against the Sky. But they're at Seattle, at Phoenix, at Vegas, versus New York before they see the Mystics again. But then they've got the Mercury again, the Lynx. So they're going to be tested here, and we'll see how much better with the practice time Christie Sides has gotten this Indiana Fever team than the last time they saw some of those other teams. They're going to see some of them for the first time. But I'm not going to fire Christie Sides based off one quarter, I guess is what I'm saying.